The Art of Walk, Chapter 3. Painful practice. When trying isn't good enough. Always do more than is required of you. George S. Patton. Your calling is not always easy. It will take work. Practice can teach you what you are and are not meant to do. Stephanie Fisher had come a long way from her hometown of Jamestown, New York to Augusta, Georgia, 777 miles away to be exact, but this was her dream and she wouldn't give it up. The year was 2010 and it was her 7th time auditioning for American Idol. She had never made it this far in the singing talent show, but this time things were going to be different. This time she would see the judges. The 23-year-old college graduate with degrees in biochemistry and communication studies was determined to make this audition a success and get invited to Hollywood Week, where dozens of contestants would compete for a chance at the finals. In the middle of pursuing a master's degree while working part-time as a model, she figured there was little time left to chase her dream of becoming a singer. It was now or never. I only have 4 more years of entertainment in my life, I told the local newspaper just before the audition, and if I have the opportunity to do it, I might as well take that. Dressed in a civil way, sequin top, donning bells around her neck, and fishnet stockings, Stephanie stepped onto the platform of America's most popular talent show, smiling nervously before the judges. "Wow," a couple of them said, remarking on her outfit. "I almost wore the same thing," Randy joked. Simon rolled his eye, obviously annoyed. "Okay, Cara," Cara said. "Let's hear it." In her black and white Oxfords, Stephanie spread her feet apart as if to ready herself, and she opened with Peggy Lee's Fever. "Never know how much I love you, never know how much I care." At this point, Stephanie was snapping her fingers and provocatively staring down the judges, who were audibly groaning. Her rhythm was off, her notes were wrong, and everyone on the set knew it, including Stephanie. They told her to stop. She frowned. "Thank you, Stephanie," Simon said. "What did you think?" Cara asked. "Terrible, honestly. You can't sing, sweetheart." In the YouTube video that tells her painful story over and over again, Stephanie admitted to being a little Star Trek in the presence of Victoria Beckham, who was a guest judge that day. Later she told the reporter this was something the producers told her to say. Victoria offered to turn around in hopes that it would make the contestant feel more at ease. Stephanie accepted the offer, which felt forced and a little too theatrical for me. The young grad student started again, a little more awkwardly, this time singing "Baby Love" by the Supremes. It wasn't any better. Another measure or two, Victoria turned back around. This time Cara added to the critical jabs, saying it was better when she was looking. Another burst of laughter erupted from the judges. "With the greatest respect," Simon said in the proper British accent, pursuing for dramatic effect, "you have a horrible voice." "Really?" Stephanie asked, looking stunned but still smiling nervously. All the preparation, all those long years of dreaming, had led to this? "Yeah," Randy chimed sympathetically. "You ain't got it going on." "You can give me a few minutes to get nervous," she pleaded. "We'd need years, Stephanie," Simon said, and the judges again all laughed in unison. And as I watched from the anonymity of my house office, years after the fact, I realized how much truth there was in that statement. The myth of talent is a typical story. If you're familiar with any talent show, you know it well. Young dreamer waiting her whole life for a shot at the big time leaves home in search of an opportunity. Once she gets the chance, she steps into the spotlight and proceeds to completely bomb, all in front of a live audience. It's painful but entertaining to watch, and we all feel a slight twinge of guilt for amusing ourselves at someone else's expense. The most painful part, though, is the fight that often ensues after the rejection. The judges tell the talent she doesn't have it, and she protects. "I don't understand. I've been practicing my whole life. I hired a vocal coach. This is my dream. Everyone says I can sing." On one show, I saw a middle-aged man who was voted off proceed to disagree with the judges, saying he had been practicing with a choreographer for 3 hours a night, and they simply didn't know what they were talking about. We know the tale well. It's the stuff primetime entertainment is made of. But what about when the opposite happens? When an unknown person takes the stage and, much to the amazement of the critics, blows everyone away? That's what 𝕎𝕠𝕣𝕜 did when she appeared on Britain's Got Talent in 2009. A middle-aged woman with a thick Scottish accent, modest appearance, and a bit of an attitude. 𝕎𝕠𝕣𝕜 was not what the judges expected. But by the end of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, she had received a standing ovation. How is it that one person over the course of 30 seconds can astound an audience, becoming the next international pop sensation, while someone else cannot? What's the difference? The traditional answer, and the reason such shows exist in the first place, is that the person doesn't have any talent. Forget passion and go find something you're good at. You're really smart, Cara told Stephanie, while trying to let the young lady down gently and point her in a more productive direction. But how, then, do we explain the success of Hillary Scott, who auditioned for American Idol twice but failed to make it to the judges round both times, and then went on from the group Lady Antebellum? Lady A is one of the most popular music groups in the world, having won 7 Grammys in their career. And what about pop singer 𝕎𝕠𝕣𝕜, who was also rejected twice on American Idol, ironically singing her future hit Bubbly, which went on to help her sell more than 6 million albums and 10 million singles? If the answer were as easy as you don't have enough talent, then Scott and 𝕬𝕜 would have had reason to give up, but they didn't. And perseverance paid off, at least for them. So maybe there is more to the issue than talent. Over the past several years, researchers have argued that what we used to think of as natural talent is in fact the result of good old-fashioned practice. Author of Talent is Overrated, Geoff Colvin, wrote, "Talent means nothing like what we think it means. If indeed it means anything at all." Citing numerous studies of accomplished individuals, world-class athletes, and performers whom we often consider prodigies, he claimed the reason for their success was practice. When the evidence does point to rare instances of natural ability, he argued, it was always followed by rigorous training. Such findings do not prove that talent doesn't exist, he wrote, but they do suggest an intriguing possibility that if it does, it may be irrelevant. In other words, nobody reaches expert status without intense preparation. Excellence, then, is a master of practice, not talent. 2-time Grammy winner 𝕎𝕠𝕣𝕜 testified to this, admitting the Idol judges were right to reject her. "I was shy, I was nervous, I didn't look the greatest, I wasn't ready for it. Yet, I was glad. When I auditioned, they said no." Did you catch that? She was glad, grateful even, for the rejection. It made her try harder and helped her understand she was not performing at her very best. The failure made her better. Is there any difference between Stephanie Fisher and the American Idol rejects who went on to become superstars? If it's not talent, then what is it? Does practice alone explain the gap between reality show rejects and future pop stars? Or is there a deeper question we ought to be asking? We all know someone whose passion exceeds their skill and who, for no lack of trying, can seem to break through. What advice do we offer to such people? Can we honestly stare them in the face and say, "Try harder"? Something about that seems wrong. Didn't Stephanie try? It sure seems that way. And it'd be hard to argue with her effort. She didn't quit after 7 rejections. But maybe the problem wasn't the amount of practice she was doing. Maybe it was kind of practice, the kind that she needs to change. The effort excuse. Our parents told us to try. It doesn't matter how well you do, my dad used to tell me while looking at my report card, just that you did your best. I went through much of life explaining a lack of excellence with that very excuse. I give up, I give it my best. This became my default shrug it off response whenever facing failure. At least I tried. What more could anyone ask? I used the effort excuse whenever encountering a challenge that exceeded my abilities. Like playing the saxophone, for instance. I half-heartedly attempted to play the woodwind instrument for 6 months before finally quitting in frustration. It was just too difficult, or maybe I just wasn't that interested. What I was doing felt like trying, like I was doing my best, but it wasn't. I was confusing my understanding of ability with what was actually possible. For many of us, there is a fundamental problem with our understanding of our own capabilities. We're often exceeding our own expectations of ourselves. And in spite of the evidence pointing to the contrary, we continue to believe in the myth of talent, that some people are born a certain way, that we cannot rise above our circumstances and achieve something greater than we have ever done before. When we do this, we deceive ourselves. I give up playing the saxophone before pushing myself to the limits of my ability. I know this because when I started playing guitar, the same thing happened. After 6 months of trying, I wanted to quit. But this time, my dad wouldn't let me. Whenever I would get into trouble, he would ground me from all activities except playing the guitar. If you want to listen to music, he would say, you will have to play it yourself. Sure, I was being disciplined for whatever wrong I had committed, but he was also putting me in a position that forced me to grow. And it worked. After only months of practicing, of pushing through that 6-month dip, I was playing the riffs I had grown up listening to, better than I ever thought possible. Surely the same has happened to you. At some point, you did something you didn't believe you could do. Something that surprised you. Maybe a coach encouraged you, or a parent pushed you, or in a moment of inspiration, you motivated yourself, but you dug a little deeper, increased your dedication, and somehow accomplished the impossible. All because you changed the way you thought. Hardwired in our brains and bodies is a potential greater than we realize, and all we have to do to unlock it is believe. Psychology professor Carol Dweck has written about this, explaining why people respond to rejection differently than others, saying the difference between the successful and unsuccessful often comes down to mindset. According to Dweck, most people adhere to one of two mindsets, the fixed mindset or the growth mindset. With the fixed mindset, people are born with a certain number of finite abilities and cannot exceed those abilities. With the growth mindset, however potential is unlimited, you can always get better. For this kind of person, the goal is not so much to be the best in the world, but to be better than you were yesterday, regardless of natural talent or the lack thereof. Every person has the ability to improve themselves. When my dad told me to do my best, he wasn't setting me up for disappointment. He was teaching me a valuable lesson about life. It's more important to try than rest on your natural abilities. Why? Because you are capable of more than you realize. And in trying, you learn something new as you push past possibility. As a result, you grow, learning that most skills are not inborn, but learned, practiced. At least they can be if you're willing to adopt the growth mindset and dedicate yourself to the practice that follows. Even the most gifted people do not have what it takes to succeed without the right attitude and years of practice. More than mindset. Did Stephanie Fisher have the right mindset? Was she not focused enough? Did she not believe enough? Or was there some other thing she was lacking? The term deliberate practice was first coined by K. Anders Ericsson, a Swedish psychologist at the University of Florida, whose research claimed that talent is not the cause of excellence, practices. But not just any kind of practice, he said, a specific kind of practice that leads to expert performance. In an era of human history in which we comfort above nearly every other virtue, we have overlooked an important truth. Comfort never leads to excellence. What it takes to become great at your craft is practice. But not just any kind of practice, the kind that hurts, that stretches and grows you. This kind of practice, which Ericsson called deliberate and we might consider more appropriately as painful, is extremely difficult. It takes place over the course of about 10 years or 10,000 hours, incidentally the average length of an apprenticeship. But this is not where the practice ends, it's just where it begins. In other words, you don't clock in 10,000 hours and instantly become an expert. You have to do the right kind of practice. According to Daniel Quayle, author of a book called The Talent Code, the right kind of practice is a process of repeated tasks that end in failure. You fail and fail and fail again until you finally succeed and learn not only the right way to do something, but the best way. This is what he calls deep practice. And it's the reason why putting in just enough time will only get you so far. To master any skill, you must first choose a task, then do it over and over again until the activity becomes second nature, and finally push through the times when you fail, exhibiting even greater focus as you repeat the action until you've done it right. Most of us have believed that all it takes to get good at something is time. If you put enough hours in, eventually you will be great. But this isn't always true. In Erickson's research, 10,000 hours of practice was a common characteristic among world-class performers, but it was not the only characteristic. If anything, 10,000 hours is a more description of expert performance than a prescription for how anyone can achieve expertise. Every performer in the study embodied a certain kind of practice. It wasn't just the quantity of hours they accumulated, but the quality of practice they did. This kind of practice is a deep work that brings world-class athletes and musicians to the edge of their abilities and then takes them one step further. Understanding the distinction between ordinary and extraordinary practice will help us understand why Stephanie Fisher continued to fail, why Colby Collier eventually didn't, and why pursuing your calling is supposed to be difficult. It is easy to practice when the activity is something we enjoy. But what do you do when the excitement runs out and your strength disappears? What do you do when that first thrill of entering a new vocation begins to wane? Do you give up? Or do you push through the pain and make your way to mastery? This is where experts differ from the rest of us. They recognize the resistance we all feel, but instead choose to see it as a sign of how close they are to their goal, disciplining themselves. They deliberately lean in to the most difficult parts. When most people tend to quit, we have come to call these people geniuses and prodigies, without ever fully understanding the work that it takes to reach such a status. But the truth is, what's in them just might be in all of us. Have you ever tried something and completely failed the first time? Remember wiping out so badly you never wanted to try again, never wanted to get back on the bike or ask another person out on a date? We understand that some skills take time and none of us knows how to do certain things without a little failure. Pain is instructive to the person willing to learn. But do we apply the same lesson to our vocations? Usually not. As children, we are courageous and willing to fail. But as we get older, we acquire inhibitions. Our shame reflex kicks in. And willing to try new things, we settle for good when called to greatness. Why do we do this? Because it's easy. To push ourselves past what others expect. Shit, I really need to change my glasses. Beyond what is normal, it's difficult and sometimes awkward, but it is a necessary part of the process. What does it take to develop the habits that lead to excellence? How do we not just answer our callings but master them? There are 3 requirements for deliberate practice, according to Erickson and his team of researchers. First, the practice requires a contest, time and energy, from the individual as well as trainers, teaching materials and facilities in which to train. Second, the activity must not be inherently motivating. It has to be something you wouldn't naturally enjoy doing. Think of it this way. If the practice is enjoyable, then you aren't growing. Muscle grows through strain and stress that creates tiny tears in the muscle fiber and cause it to expand. Skills and knowledge are developed the same way. This is why so few people engage in the process of painful practice. It's hard, but as Tom Hanks says in a league of their own. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. Third, the activity cannot be done a very long time without leading to exhaustion. You must take yourself beyond what you think is possible, to the utter limits of your ability. If you aren't pushing yourself to the point of sheer exhaustion, you are not trying hard enough. Now contrast this paradigm of practice with my regular running habit, which I usually do a few times a week. If I'm lucky, it's fun, easy, and keeps me in shape. But it will lead to world-class performance, not likely. I haven't put nearly enough hours in, not to mention the right kind of hours. I only run when it's convenient, never pushing myself too hard. Why don't I put more efforts into exercise? Because I don't want to. It's something I do for fun, not excellence. This is an important distinction. When considering your life's work, most people won't continue doing something they aren't passionate about, especially when it gets hard. Putting an activity through painful practice is a great way to determine your direction in life. If you can do something when it's not fun, even you are exhausted and bored and want to give up, then it just might be your calling. I don't know where this idea that your calling is supposed to be easy comes from. Rarely do easy and greatness go together. The art of doing hard things requires an uncommon level of dedication. You have to love the work to be able to persevere through those difficult times, those painful moments when you would probably rather quit. How do you do that without an uncanny amount of passion? It's not possible. You must love the work, not until you find something you can do to the point of exhaustion, to the extent that you almost hate it, but can return to it tomorrow. Have you found something worth pursuing? Love, I think, is much better criterion than lack of difficulty. If you can love what you do, even when it hurts, then you may have more than a hobby. And if you've never pushed your talents this far before, if you've never tested your skills that much, then you probably haven't discovered your true vocation. Sometimes, the only way to know the difference between a hobby and a calling is to put yourself through the crucible of painful practice. What a prodigy doesn't look like. When I think of Martin Chamberlain, a single word comes to mind: a prodigy. A precious 21-year-old web developer running his own company as a senior in college. He looks like the poster child for the next Microsoft or Google. Seeing his sudden success, you might be tempted to think of him as a young Bill Gates. Like me, you might assume he must have been using a computer his whole life, and you would be wrong. The truth is, Martin had only used the family computer for schoolwork before the age of 16, but in just a short amount of time, he learned Photoshop, familiarized himself with HTML and CSS, and started charging for web design services. In less than 2 years, he built a blog, started a business, and began attracting clients to earn money for college. What might surprise you is that long before he was a web developer, Martin was an artist, and he never would have imagined himself spending his days staring at a computer screen. Martin's story is not one of long-term preparation for some big moment, but rather a testimony of how powerful a spark of inspiration can be at just the right time, and how practice can happen even without ever knowing it. A homeschool kid growing up in the home of Baptist minister, Martin didn't have much access to the one computer in the Chamberlain house, so he spent his free time painting and playing guitar. When his brother William left their hometown of Bixby, Oklahoma, to attend the University of Tulsa in 2008, he left the family computer open for his younger brother to use. Before then, Martin recalled in a phone conversation, "I rarely touched the computer because he was always on it." Just before William left, Martin told his brother he wanted to build websites for people, so William gave him a book on the subject. When I asked him where the desire to build websites came from, he said it probably came from watching his brother. A case of young brother syndrome, I guess. Martin said, "William was smart, going to college. I was a starving artist who wasn't living in reality. I realized I needed to make a name for myself. if I was ever going to attract the kinds of people I wanted to spend my life with. Plus, I laughed as still, he was unsure of the future. When he was 18, Martin took a trip from Oklahoma to California to attend a painting workshop, where he created an 11 by 14-inch oil linen painting, which was featured in the Zentham Art Gallery in Carmel. At the time, he thought this was his big break, what would finally launch his art career. But when he started posting his artwork online, he not only unlocked a passion he never knew he had. He also saw a demand for a new skill. When Martin started working on websites, it was first just as a hobby, but then developed into something more. His initial website was a replica of bubbleender.com, a tutorial in the book his brother gave him, which he never published. His second project was a personal homepage, a site showing his art portfolio. The third was a website for an Australian client who ended up never using it, but paid Martin $800 nonetheless. It was his first paying gig. It taught me that people were willing to pay for my skill set, he recalled. As Martin put his work out there for the world to see, he noticed how visitors to his website started showing more interested in his design services than his oil paintings. After building that first website, he felt exhilarated. It made me feel like I had just made something important, he said, not unlike the feeling he experienced after finishing a painting. Something just clicked. Now, a few years later, Martin just runs his own web design company, which helps pay the bill while he finishes up school. Every time he works on a website, he uses skills he acquired as an artist. Concepts like color theory, composition, and the golden triangle help him create better sites for clients. Skills he learned long before he ever started building websites. Never would he have guessed all those years of painting were actually training him for something that was an art, at least not in the traditional sense. So, how did a young man who dreamed of becoming an artist turn into a web developer? How did someone who didn't grow up playing computer games start a business building websites? And how did he learn all those skills so quickly? The easy answer is to say he was called. But as we have seen, a calling is never so simple. The more complex answer, the honest one, is that before he knew what he was doing, Martin was practicing. The lesson of accidental apprenticeship is that long before a person is ready for his calling, life is preparing that person for the future through chance encounters and serendipitous experiences. That's what Martin's brother William was doing. He was mentoring his little brother without even knowing it, in a skill that would eventually be instrumental in his success. Neither brother probably knew the significance of what was happening, but the two were engaged in a long-distance apprenticeship in which the elder was influencing the younger, helping him find his way. But Martin didn't stop with watching his brother. He absorbed all the content available to him, reading everything he could find on the subject blogs, articles, books, anything. His goal wasn't just to be good, he wanted to be great. When working on a website, especially at the beginning, if he came across a problem he couldn't solve, he would look up the answer online and figure it out. I used to joke saying, "I'm not a good programmer," he said. "I'm just really good at using Google." There was a lot of truth to this. All humility aside, when Martin got serious, he acquired a skill most people cannot fathom figuring out. And he did it in just a couple of years. He didn't study abstract information or pay thousands of dollars for classes with outdated information he'd never use. He used his precious experience, got to work, and asked for help along the way. He practiced. The way Martin Chamberlain found his calling, or at least the start of it, was an accident. His brother gave him a book that unlocked a skill he never knew he had and opened up a world of possibility. He watched what someone else did, got a vision for his future, spent hours every day working toward that goal. It's not that he knew he wanted to design websites, he didn't. He just loved art and stumbled on an application of that passion that surprised him. Trying something new, he discovered that he was good at building websites and enjoyed it. True practice is not just about learning a skill. It's about investing the time and energy necessary to discern if this is what you are meant to do. It's about using difficulty to discover what resonates and what does not. As you can see what does, you will take one more step in the right direction. It starts with a spark. Aren't we discrediting luck a little though? Don't some people succeed just because they got a big break when others do not? Certainly, we can't deny the existence of special opportunities for some people. The idea that every person can be whatever he or she wants isn't always true. Success is more than a matter of hard work. It's contingent on factors sometimes outside of our control. Where and when you were born can influence what you do. But greatness does not just happen. Ariston's research and common sense tells us that skill is the result of intense practice. It's the product of persistent trial and error until the person gets it right. Nobody walked on the set of American Idol and blew away the judges without practicing. And nobody picked up a computer and started coding. It takes a lot of practice to get good. There are, however, times when practice is not enough. As with Stephanie Fisher's 7 auditions, and there are surprising moments of breakthrough, as with Martin Chamberlain, when a person picks up a skill on the first try, as if he were born for it. Maybe he was. What we are learning from science now is that although humans are capable of more than anybody thought 100 years ago, there are some abilities no amount of practice can overcome. This is why we consistently see Kenyans winning marathons and why Asians tend to be good at math. It's not just the existence of opportunities that creates success. It's the fact that there seem to be some things we were made to do and some things we were not. How do we find such things? What makes some little boys and girls want to be athletes instead of musicians? Or what causes a painter to want to learn computer programming, for that matter? We can learn a lot from case studies of famous athletes and musicians and deepen our understanding of skill acquisition through research. But what science can prove, what we still don't know, is what makes a person want to practice in the first place. What drives a person to put in those countless hours of practice? Where does motivation come from? It starts with a spark. Daniel Quayle told me in an interview, you get a vision of your future self. You see someone you want to become. It's a very mysterious process. When my son Aiden saw the animated Pixar movie Cars for the first time, he was transfixed. He had seen films and cartoons before, but none that could hold his attention. Cars was different. As 1 year old, he watched the entire movie from start to finish without stopping, which he had never done before. Now he has enough merchandise from the movie to fill 2 entire bedrooms. He is obsessed. Neither my wife nor I push any of this on him, but the moment he saw the cars race across the screen, he lit up, and ever since, he's loved it. Was there something innate in Aiden? Something maybe even God-given that made him love that movie? I don't know. That's not really the point. What do I know is that his attraction to a cartoon says something to me about my son. Aiden has a personality, and with that unique personality comes a destiny that is all his own, one independent of external circumstances and upbringing. Sure, his mom and I can influence him, and his friends can rub off on him, and his genes may dictate the extent of certain abilities, but that is not where his future ends. It's where it begins. There will always be those spark moments when who he is and what he is meant to be shine through. No one illustrates this better than Garrett Rush Miller, the boy whose handicap proposed severe limitation on his life. At 5 years old, he was blind and unable to walk, and the doctors were skeptical of how long he would live. And yet, the moment he touched that tandem bicycle, everything changed. He lit up. According to his dad, that was his spark. Our natural talent or lack thereof is not enough. Neither is practice. Some skills will seem to come naturally, while others have to be developed. We can try a lot of things, but some we will do better than others. And some failures are not challenges to overcome, but signs of what we shouldn't be doing. But what we must have before any of this is an initial spark. That moment of inspiration when we too light up. Which is something entirely different from luck. As Jim Collins pointed out in Great by Choice, Bill Gates was not the only high school student in the 1970s with access to computers. And Tiger Woods wasn't the only kid whose dad played golf. So why did these men succeed in extraordinary ways when the same opportunities were available to others? They embraced the opportunity and then did something extraordinary with it. Luck, good and bad, Collins wrote, happens to everyone, whether we like it or not. But when we look at those who achieved extraordinary success, we see people who recognize luck and seize it. Leaders who grab luck, events, and make much more of them. What makes a person successful, then, is not the luck, but what he or she does with it. Opportunities come. The question is, what will you do when they arrive? Successful people are just as lucky as the unsuccessful. The difference is they do something remarkable with their lucky moment while the rest of the world sits around waiting for the next lucky streak to come. In that sense, we all have opportunities, not necessarily to become whatever we want, but to become someone, the person we were meant to be. It's one thing to chalk up to success to good fortune, especially when they belong to someone else. And quite another to recognize that we live in a world of opportunity and we all can do something with what we've given. Practice is what tests our resolves and what forces you to hone your abilities long after the spark has faded. And are you committed to the craft, or will you quit when it gets too hard? The ultimate goal of practice is to reach a state of what K. Anders Ericsson calls eminent performance. When a person goes beyond the knowledge of their teachers to make a unique, innovative contribution to their domain. We all want to do something that we are good at. The ultimate goal of practice is to reach a state of what K. Anders Ericsson calls eminent performance. When a person goes beyond the knowledge of their teachers to make a unique innovation contribution to their domain. We all want to do something that we are good at and that the world in some way recognizes. But the point of practice is never just about skill acquisition. It's about making a contribution to the world, which is why when we are in the midst of pursuing our calling, we must not only ask if it is something that we are good at, but if it is something good. We need more than excellence to satisfy the deepest longings of our souls, which would raise the question, is it perhaps possible to succeed at the wrong thing? It is indeed. The curious case of William Hung. If you were to do a Google search for American Idol rejects, you would instantly retrieve a list of names that will forever live in internet infamy. Toward the top of that list sits, of course, Stephanie Fisher, the awkward grad student whom embarrassed herself in front of Victoria Beckham. But long before Stephanie took the stage for the 7th time in 2010, William Hung appeared during the 3rd season of the show to do a rendition of Ricky Martin's She Bangs. I want to make music my living, he told the cameras moments before appearing before the judges. At 5'6", wearing a blue button shirt with pictures of assorted shoes on it, sporting an overbite. Williams didn't look like the kind of person destined for the spotlight. Not unlike Stephanie's, his performance was underwhelming to the judges, who tried to hide their laughter until he moved his hips and sang off-key. You can sing, you can dance, so what do you want me to say? Simon asked. I already gave my best, and I have no regrets at all, Williams said. His response contrasting with the typical confrontational response when judges were accustomed to receiving. Then he added with pride, I have no professional training of singing and dancing, to which Simon responded, no, well, there's the surprise of the century. In the end, it didn't work out for William, and he was sent home like so many others. But something strange happened after that. Long before going viral, he became the phenomenon it is today. William Hung's audition video started racking up thousands and then millions of views on YouTube. Instead of people laughing at him, they cheered. A fan set up a site in his honor. In the first week, it received more than 4 million hits. Within a month, the number had exceeded 8 million. William began receiving emails from people thanking him for his courage and example, which made the young man wonder if there was a career hiding somewhere in all this fame. That was around the time he was offered his first record contract. At the time of his audition, William was a civil engineering student at the University of California, Berkeley. After his performance on American Idol, he won the hearts of fans everywhere, as well as the attention of media. Koch Entertainment offered him a good deal that resulted in his first album, Inspiration, a collection of cover songs that sold more than 200,000 copies, followed by 2 other less successful records. In 2004, William left college to pursue a career in music, making appearances on the shows of David Letterman, Ellen DeGeneres, and Howard Stern. He even returned for a guest performance on American Idol, the same show from which he was rejected only months before. It was, in a way, poetic justice. He had turned defeat into triumph and spent the next few months performing all over the world, living off the fame won by a viral video on YouTube. In spite of its success, the career of William Hung was controversial. Some criticized his fame, saying it reinforced Asian stereotypes and promoted racism. As he was thought to have no real musical talent, others rooted for him. They loved his tenacity. None of the critics seemed to bother the endless optimism William, who knew how much his story meant to his fans. He was living his dream and sharing it with all. In 2011, though that dream died when William ended his music career by accepting a job as a technical crime analyst. Was he giving up on his dream? Won't the millions of fans prove he had found his calling, that music was what he was supposed to be doing with his life? Maybe not. In an earlier interview, he told a reporter, "I may disappoint you with saying this, but I'm actually hoping to become a math teacher someday." In the same interview, he shared his love for Pythagorean theorem and said that his favorite mathematician had to be Euclid. Sometimes it just takes a little time to find out what you are meant to do with your life. As I watched William light up while talking about math, it's no wonder he became an analyst whose daily responsibilities include calculating the probability of crime activity. In that earlier interview, he offered clues as to where his true passion lay, saying things like engineering takes even greater dedication than music. Does he really sound like someone who's destined to be a musician? "My passion has always been math," he told a reporter after his almost decade-long stint with fame. "It just took a while to end up as my career." Though the long and winding road toward his calling, William learned about perseverance and staying true to his passion. In spite of what people say, in a speech delivered at a Toastmasters meeting, he said, "When you see a little hope, doors will open. Never give up, because all you need is a little hope." Watching him retell his story on one YouTube clip after another, I see why so many people were fans of William. He knows he's being ironic. He knows he can sing as well as Ricky Martin, and that he's an awkward dancer, but that doesn't stop him from trying. He just loves music. And this, I think, is why we love William Hung. He's an underdog, yet in spite of the accolades, fame, and fortune were not enough to hold its attention. And therein lies a lesson for us all. Success is a process of persevering through difficulties, but it's also about knowing yourself. What Williams might have added to that inspiring Toastmaster speech is that occasionally you step through the wrong door, you misapply the principles of practice and end up succeeding at the wrong thing, or discovering your career is somehow a shadow of your true calling. Which is why we must think of this process as a journey. That was what Martin Chamberlain discovered about his art. Though a passion, painting wasn't the end of the road for him. It was the beginning. In his case, being an artist opened a door to another skill he might never have encountered otherwise. In any vocation, there comes a time when you realize the path you are on is not taking you where you want to go. All this preparation has culminated in helping you achieve the wrong goal. At those times, you might feel stuck. What do you do then? You do what William Hume finally did. You realize it's never too late to change and take a turn in the direction of your true calling. Part 2. So that's all for chapter 3. Tomorrow I'll be reading chapter 4 and others. This is Daniel. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.